So welcome, Elaine and John, to the Zoom room. Great to have you back. So we're going to have a look at today's quote and email, lead us into today's lesson, and perhaps we'll have time to do the text. Actually, there's just 4 paragraphs of it. It's an introduction to a new section. So let's see how we go. I've got a couple of hours, so all right, so let me share my screen with you. And dive into our teaching for today. Just pull the email up. Okay, so you can read that quote for us, John. Today's quote. It's big enough for you?
Yeah. Many are the names of God, and infinite the forms through which he may be approached. Ramakrishna.
Yeah, it was a 19th century Indian mystic. Speaks about the universality of God, or perfect love as we call it, and that it can be approached in many ways. Why is this? Because if God or love is ultimate awareness or being, stands to reason that it must underlie all forms in this world. So it's been called by some philosophers the ground of being.
On top of that weight.
So you can perceive and approach God or love in anything, ranging from the most magnificent sunset to the most seemingly insignificant insect, if you so choose, because it's there in everything. Anything that has life has this presence in it. It's an example of this I experienced a while ago, which I was just looking at some ants. I think I'd just gone for a swim or something. I was lying in the sun and just watching these ants. And the random and chaotic nature of their movement took me into the deep realization of the insanity of the ego, which remember is just the belief in separation, by helping me to extrapolate these effects to human beings and thereby confirm my choice for the reality of God or love. It simply is and requires no frantic movement, scurrying around in search of something outside us, which is what almost every person who is not on a genuine spiritual path is doing in their life. So it was quite a spiritual experience just from watching the ants and going into a state of heightened awareness. Another good example related to insects, given that we're on the subject, is the moment of awakening that Yeshua calls a holy instant in the Course. They call Satori in Zen Buddhism. That happened to a lady called Byron Katie, who's a well-known spiritual author and teacher. So her backstory is that from her early 30s, she was really depressed. She was stuck in self-loathing. She was often unable to get out of bed for days, for weeks at a time. By mid-40s, she was not only severely depressed, but she was agoraphobic. In other words, she was scared of open spaces. She was overeating, and she was addicted to codeine and alcohol. So she was drugs, alcohol, and food, 3 substances, and she had a phobia. So she was referred by an insurance company to a women's counseling center, and 2 weeks of sort of self-reflection at the center. She woke up one morning on the floor of her room because she had a bed, but she didn't feel like she was worthy of sleeping in the bed. That's how low her self-esteem was. So she was sleeping on the floor next to the comfortable bed, and she woke up and a bug crawled over her foot, and she just looked at it, but she didn't have an adverse reaction to it Because in that moment, she had no self-identification. And she realized on a deep level, it was her own beliefs that had been creating her suffering. And suddenly in that moment, she perceived everything differently. It's like her entire life story of all that pain and suffering that she caused herself just dropped away. And she had perfect clarity and what we call true perception. She saw that her suffering came from her thoughts about her life situation, such as my life is horrible or I don't deserve happiness, and not from the situation itself. She realized a simple truth. When she believed her thoughts, she suffered. When she didn't believe them, she was happy. And all of this kind of, the essence of it dropped in that single moment of just watching the bug crawl over her foot in this state of heightened awareness. And then she went to the mirror, apparently, and she just looked in the mirror. And who is this person looking back at me? She'd gone beyond the personal self into this higher awareness. And so she, out of this initial insight, this moment of satori, or the holy instant, she developed a process of self-inquiry, which she called simply the work, that healed her mind, helped her let go of her depression, fears, and addictions, and become a healer who's helped hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions, around the world, change their lives over the last 35 years. Check it out. There's a link there for the work. It's 4 simple questions. It's a method of inquiry, which really helps you to change your perception of whatever it is that you're inquiring. So you turn it around, and actually your existing perception is completely turned around through the process. So it's a very similar process to what the course is advocating. A complete turnaround in your perception using language, using questions. So the work helps people to let go of the fundamental cause of their illness, which, as Yeshua says clearly in this quote from the text, is their desire. So illness is some form of external searching. That's a quote from early in the text. And this echoes the second noble truth taught by the Buddha 500 years ago, 500 years before Yeshua, that desire or craving for something outside oneself is the source of all suffering. So these spiritual principles are universal, whether it comes from Yeshua or the Buddha. It's the idea that seeking outside of yourself is never going to bring you happiness. So this leads nicely into another interpretation of today's quote, which, let me remind you, says, many are the names of God and infinite the forms through which he may be approached. So the other interpretation is that there are many different ideas that are symbols of or pointers to God or love. These pointers typically show up as different dogmas in religions that their fundamentalist followers incorrectly perceive as the ultimate truth, rather than as mere pointers to the truth. So what typically happens is people fixate on form, and they say the pointer is the truth, whether that's a word, a concept, an idea, or sometimes it's put into objects. So we have sacred, the sacred shroud, the shroud of Turin, or the Holy Grail is cut, and so people they make these objects sacred, which is to miss the point. And so this attachment to fixed beliefs, which is what a dogma really is, it's just a fixed belief that's very stubbornly held by the believer, actually blinds these followers to the very truth they claim to be ardently seeking through their religious path. The dogmas inevitably create separation, because those who don't share the believer's faith in them are seen to be separate from the believer and some kind of threat that needs to be guarded against. And this denies the truth of the underlying unity between every person and sentient being on this planet as extensions of the same creative source. Hi, John. Welcome back. You're back inside.
Right, yeah.
You're back inside.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So to illustrate this error, I give you a good example of this. I was in discussions with an organization promotes the teachings of A Course in Miracles, believe it or not, to do an online evening workshop for their members. But I was going away to do a 10-day silent retreat, which is the original form of meditation taught by the Buddha 2,500 years ago, in case you didn't know where Vipassana comes from. So, out of courtesy, I just let the lady I was communicating with know, look, I'll be unavailable for 10 days because of this reason. And, let's pick up when I come back. But the organization in question had a policy to exclude teachers who seemed to be following in any way another spiritual path, because they're not, quote, pure enough to teach A Course in Miracles, even though the whole message of ACM is that we are one. So excluding anyone from that unity on any invented grounds is just another separation device the ego uses to justify its apparent separate identity. So this is how often the ego works in spiritual circles. It's called spiritual ego. Actually, I had some profound mystic experiences on the retreat that I've shared before in these sessions and in emails. I won't go into too much, but I just, I came, the term pure formless awareness of perfect love came out of a mystical experience that I had after 9 days of this retreat, where I just went into this awareness for, I don't know how long, I don't think it was very long, maybe a few minutes. But it was life-changing. I'll remember that experience for the rest of my life. So it certainly was probably the most direct experience I've had of God, and yet this particular organization was saying this isn't pure enough. This is how it goes when the mind gets obsessed with dogma and forgets that it's really an experience that we're after. The experience, as captured in the words pure formless awareness of perfect love, then you start losing the plot, and it just becomes dogmatic and all about intellectual ideas and concepts rather than felt experience. So, Elaine, if you can read this particular quote, as Yeshua points out in the introduction to clarification of terms in the Course, that a universal theology is impossible. You want to read that?
Yeah. A universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary.
So he's pointing us very clearly away from theology, away from dogma and the intellect, and to an experience, which is universal. And if you look at the history of various spiritual traditions, you see that the highest attainers in those traditions had very similar experiences. They describe them in very similar ways across many, often hundreds of years, separating those experiences, which is the universal experience of truth that Yeshua is pointing us to and saying that is not only possible, but it's necessary if you're going to attain an enlightened state. It must be experiential. It's not theologians are not enlightened. They just believe in certain theology, certain dogma. And that's the difference between a theologian, intellectual, philosophers could possibly fall into that category as well, very much in the mind, and a mystic who's actually had the experience of it. So this kind of so-called spiritual ego defense against the truth has been going on for a very long time in many religious and spiritual disguises in the name of God. Say, well, this is our God and this is what God says, but actually it's just a dogma, and that God is a false God. It's a God of the ego, made up by the belief in separation. That's got to create an illusion of a God to substitute for the real true identity, which is one with you, the Christ, the one self, the great I am presence, many names for it. This I am name is recorded in this passage in the book of Exodus, 2,600 years ago, as the first name of God in the Bible revealed to Moses from a burning bush. So John, if you can read that one. God said to Moses,
God said to Moses, I am what I am. And he said, Say this to the people of Israel. I am sent. I am, has sent me to you.
Hmm. Now, this was the first, as far as I'm aware, the first recorded name of God in the Bible. And the first like direct experience someone had of conversing with us. And so, Moses says, well, who are you? He's just been told to go and free his people from their bondage in Egypt. And he says, well, can you introduce yourself? Who are you? This is what this presence says to him. I am what I am, or I am that I am. It would have been said in Hebrew, so it's a translation into English, but something like, and then he says, I am has sent me to you. So the I am presence, not some intellectual God in the sky, not some entity outside of you. I am refers directly to your being. I am is a statement of being. I am that I am. I am what I am. A pointer to pure formless awareness, or true awareness, as the name of God. And then, so in Hebrew, the passage uses the verb eya, which is a form of the word haya, normally translated as I am or I will be. But that's interesting because now you're starting to change it, aren't you? I will be is now in the future, whereas I am is present. So immediately the distortion comes in with the words. So there's this article by a theologian, which you can read if you're so inclined, that translation is in most situations adequate, but for the meaning of God's name in Exodus 3, several other places in the Bible, apparently Heya carries the added weight of representing God himself, which was then adapted into the traditional Hebrew name for God, Yahweh. And so this is how the words come. It's an adaptation. According to the same article, Yahweh is God's personal name, so closely identified with his being that many Orthodox Jews refuse to pronounce it, instead saying Hashem, the name, or Adonai, Lord. To God his name, sanctity. Okay, so there we see in this little illustration of what's happened in one particular religion, it's Jewish religion, how the original revelation of Moses and his mystic experience, right? God was the very essence of his and everyone's being. Very simply put, expressed as simply as possible in words, as I am what I am, has then been denied subtly, but it's a denial nevertheless. And God has become some external entity separate from the fundamentalists who believe in this conception of their own minds that they must then defend instead of accept as their own true identity. That needs no defense because it simply is. So all of this is just illusion. As soon as you start putting words to it, and now you bring it into future, I will be, and you say, well, God has a personal name, and so now we give him different names. It's a mess because the simplicity of that original insight is lost in all of that. And that's essentially what has happened over and over throughout history in almost every religious tradition. It starts with a mystic experience. Someone has an authentic connection with the source, and then it gets denied subtly. Apparently they, are worshiping God, but actually the mind just comes in and starts creating all kinds of concepts and dogmas and words, and now there's no direct experience anymore. It's all conceptual. So it's why, in fact, formalized religions exist with dogma, because it's the mystic experience that's now being conceptualized into conceptual thought that's become strongly believed in. So it becomes a dogma, rather than just saying, well, this is a helpful pointer. These words are just pointers to a universal experience of God. God is not Hashem or Yahweh or Adonai. These are man-made constructs. Language is a man-made construct that can point you in that direction, but it doesn't give you the experience of it. That is happens when you open to it, as Moses and other mystics have been. And then you can't really even name it. The highest level, there's no name for pure formless awareness. I called it pure formless awareness of perfect love because I thought it was the most open-ended word that I could find, phrase that I could find to describe it, because it's not a closed definition. It's very open. But that's just a pointer. It's another pointer to the experience that is beyond words. When you're in that state, there's no words to describe it. It is ineffable, which means indescribable. So here we are, actually, in today's session to discuss any of this. So any thoughts on any of that? John, Elaine?
No, I'm good with I'm good with that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to our workbook lesson then. So John, have you read these? We did go through them yesterday, but if you'd like to have a quick read of the introductory, there's 3 paragraphs. Do you want to read those?
I have read them. I have read them.
You did read them. Okay. So we can skip those. Really to start the recording. So to summarize these introductory paragraphs, he's saying that this is about experience. So it's now we're going into more experiential understanding and knowledge, and it's about lifting the blocks. Lessons are geared specifically to widening horizons and direct approaches to the special blocks that keep my vision narrow and too limited to perceive the value of my goal. Right? So we're focusing on letting go of special blocks and an experience that so this goes from the intellect, and the course is quite intellectual. So Helen Schuckman said, "Oh, finally a spiritual path for intellectuals." She was quite intellectual, so was Paul Thetford. They were academics. They were professors of psychology at a prestigious university. So it starts there to engage the intellectual mind by design, because he knew that he wouldn't get their attention if he talked in, sort of too plain speak. It had to sort of engage them, and it had to speak about psychological concepts as well. So he brought him a lot of psychology into and then merged it with the Christian language. And so you've got this combination of quite advanced modern psychological concepts with these ancient Christian terms like Holy Spirit, God, Christ, and so on. And now he's pointing us beyond words to an experience, preparing us really. This is the second part of the course. We're now lesson 180, so we're halfway through. Part 2 starts in about 40 lessons time, 35 lessons time. So it's preparing us for another phase, which is going to be more experiential. And so we can actually experience these higher states through the practice and go beyond words and dogma. Okay, so that's the lead into today's lesson, which is lesson 183. So if you can read that, John, in the original and the alternative. I'll just bring
I call upon God's name. Oh, hang on. There we go.
All right, there we go. I'll just bring it up. I'm just switching to a document. Call upon God's name.
I call upon God's name and on my own. I call on perfect love's identity and on my own.
Does the translation speak to you? So I thought that was maybe a meaningful translation to make. The identity, perfect love's identity is God's name. It's actually my own identity, the I am presence. So that's what it really means. In my interpretation, of course, some others might interpret it differently. A more theological approach would be like talking about God's name and actually honoring the form of the name, like Yahweh or Adonai or Hashem, or whichever language you talk about. But actually, I think the correct interpretation, what Yeshua really means is this is your true identity. And you're calling upon that identity, which he explicitly says is your own. Perfect love's identity, which is your true self.
I like the translation in terms of it explains it better, but I kind of like the original because of its.
Yeah, it's kind of poetic. Call upon God's name.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's why we have both. You can read both, and then you get a more rounded understanding of it. Okay, so if you want to read the first paragraph in the original and the alternatives book translation there, line by line, sentence by sentence.
God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. Perfect love's identity is wholly aware, but no more so than mine. To call upon his name is but to call upon your own. To call on its identity is only to call on my own. A father gives his son his name and thus identifies the son with him. A source gives its extension its identity and so identifies the extension with it. His brothers share his name and thus are they united in a bond to which they turn for their identity. Its companions share its identity, and so they are united in a bond to which they turn for their identity. Your father's name reminds you who you are, even within a world that does not know, even though you have not remembered it. My source's identity reminds me who I am, even within a world that does not know, even though I have not remembered it.
Thoughts on that?
So he's saying here that God's name, perfect love's identity, is our source. It's our means of identification, as it is of that of our companions. And it draws us to that common identity, that common source.
Reminds me who I am, even in a world that I have not remembered. And even though I have not remembered it, so another way of remembering. And that's really what he's giving us with these lessons. You know, each lesson is just another way of remembering, isn't it? And he gives us a slightly different angle on it. You know, God's name. Okay, well, that's your own identity. In other lessons, he says, I am as God created me. Or I am spirit, or I'm one self. You know, it's just different pointers to the same idea, which keeps our minds kind of engaged in it. I think that's the idea. If it was the same lesson 365 days a year, we'd get bored because he knows how our minds work. Okay, so move to number 2. God's name cannot be heard without response. So we did in the original, and the first one in the original, and the alternative. In fact, yeah, the whole thing, because it's angels and stuff. So there's some translation I've done of that.
God's name cannot be heard without response, nor said with an echo in the mind that calls you to remember. I cannot recognize perfect love's identity without response, nor perceiving it without an echo in my mind that calls me to remember it. Say his name, and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand and sing to you as they spread out their wings to keep you safe and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your holiness. When I claim perfect love's identity, true thoughts and feelings envelop me, telling me that I am completely safe and sheltered from every worldly thought that may intrude upon my pure formless awareness.
Yeah, so the angels there that he's talking about. He doesn't talk about angels very often, of course, but there's a few mentions. Translated those as true thoughts. Invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand. So when I claim perfect love's identity to the ground on which I stand, true thoughts and feelings envelop me, telling me that I'm completely safe and sheltered. So it's true thoughts, true feelings. Those are the angels that surround us, surround the ground on which you stand, which is your true identity. So although the first one, again, it's more poetic, sounds beautiful, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand what angels mean. And that there's a tendency to externalize and say, well, angels are some kind of separate entities. We've been taught that angels seemingly have names and they have their own names and follow. So they become like sub-deities almost, archangels and so on. But all of that is really a devolvement from oneness. It's still part of the separation idea. In truth, perfect oneness is perfect oneness, and there is nothing else. So by just seeing the angels as thoughts, you strip away that another ego defense and say, well, that's just my own thoughts. And positive thoughts we call angels, and the negative thoughts we call devils. It's as simple as that. And so you get over all of the terminology and trying to externalize these things. So let's make them to some kind of separate being, entity outside of you, which can then be related to and even worshipped. Actually, you want to bring it back into the mind and say, well, actually, it's just always my own awareness, my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own emotions that I'm dealing with. And I can correct any of them because of that, because they're actually all internally generated, not externally generated. Does that make sense? With the angels?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So what's he saying here in summary? Paragraph 2.
Well, we can't recognize the perfect love's identity. But when we claim perfect love's identity, our true thoughts come to light, and feelings of safety and shelter, and every worldly thought that may intrude upon pure formless awareness, providing we make that choice.
Comes down to choice again. When I claim it, I must claim it. I must accept it as mine. And then these true thoughts and feelings are a consequence of claiming it. Okay, so let's go to number 3. John, if you can read that.
When I claim perfect love's identity, hang on. Repeat God's name, and all the world responds by laying down illusions. When I claim perfect love's identity, the world responds by letting go of illusion. Every dream the world holds dear has suddenly gone by, and where it seemed to stand, you find a star, a miracle of grace. Every dream the world values suddenly disappears, and where it seemed to stand, I have an insight, which is a correction in my thinking that leads to the experience of grace. The sick arise, healed of their sickly thoughts. The spiritually blind can see. The stubborn can suddenly hear the truth. The sorrowful cast off their mourning, and the tears of pain are dried as happy laughter comes to bless the world. The sorrowful let go of their mourning, and the tears of pain are dried as happy laughter comes to bless the world. So it's saying here that as we identify, as we realign ourselves with Source, we come back into beingness, sickness, and the sick are healed. The spiritually blind can see. So our misinterpretations are corrected, and we let go of our sadness and move towards peacefulness and contentedness, happiness.
Mm. And this identity just collapses everything else. What he's saying, takes us into a different world, the happy dream. The world responds by letting go of illusions. So when you do it, then you're contributing to that process for everyone. Now, the skeptics will go, well, no, hardly. When I let go, not everyone lets go. But what Yeshua is saying is, well, if you don't let go, how can you expect anyone else to? It's unrealistic. You want healing for the world, but you're not willing to let go yourself. So you do it first for yourself, and then you contribute to that happening throughout the world. The more that people do that, the more likely it is to happen, because it's we learn from each other. There's this theory of morphic resonance that Rupert Sheldrake talks about, that every species is connected on a mind level. So if even one individual starts thinking in a new way, and often then displaying a new behavior pattern, that spreads quite quickly to the whole species, if it's advantageous. If it's just some kind of random and it didn't really work, then not. But if it's something that works, often related to survival, related to food. So things like monkeys learn to crack nuts with rocks and things like that. They've seen that that spreads to the whole monkey population of that particular type of monkey, even though there's no way the monkeys in different continents, different islands could have communicated in any other way but telepathically. So in the same way, we as human beings are all tapped in to this morphic field in which humans all communicate. And so when you do it and you start letting go of your illusions, you're helping other people to do it. And that's the way that you create a better world. You do it and you spread this letting go frequency, if you like, into the world, and more people are likely to do it because you're doing it. So that's what he means there, although you don't necessarily take that absolutely literally. The world responds by letting go of illusions. Well, in time, that doesn't happen immediately, does it? But he's not talking, much of what he says in the Course is not linear. You can't interpret it on that level because he's trying to take you beyond the linear domain of time and space. Okay, so any thoughts, comments, or questions on number 3?
No, it's good for me.
Number 4. Okay, so man, if you can read number 4 for us in the original and the alternative, line by line.
Repeat the name of God, and little names have lost their meaning. When I claim perfect love's identity, little beliefs in separation lose their meaning for me. No temptation, but become a nameless and unwanted thing before God's name. No temptation becomes meaningless and unwanted before perfect love's
just temptation. I just took out the note.
Yeah.
He does this a lot. No, there's a double negative. No temptation, but instead of that, say temptation becomes meaningless and unwanted.
Yeah.
simpler.
Yeah. Temptation becomes meaningless and unwanted before perfect love's identity. Repeat his name and see how easily you will forget the names of all the gods you valued. When I claim perfect love's identity, I see how easily I forget all the beliefs I valued. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They lose the value I gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to you. Although before you let the name of God replace their little names, you stood before them worshipfully, naming them as gods. They will lose the value I gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to me, although before I let the identity of perfect love replace these beliefs, I stood before them worshipfully, identifying with them as true.
Yeah. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, when we choose perfect love's identity, the little beliefs that we had in separation lose their meaning, and temptation becomes meaningless, and when we choose perfect love's identity, and we'll see how easily we forget the beliefs we originally valued. That's, yeah.
Yeah. So those little temptations that might have got you previously. If you experience the grace, the beauty of this identity, this presence within you, everything else fades by comparison, and you're no longer tempted by whatever it may be. We had a conversation about a forest, anything in form doesn't tempt you anymore, because this presence within you is so splendid, so awesome, if you like, because this is the only proper use of the word awe. It's when you come into the presence of God. It is awesome. That nothing in this world can match it. So then, by comparison, this world is a shabby substitute. Everything, even the most, magnificent sunset or a beautiful forest or whatever, is as nothing compared to that splendid experience of just connecting with your source and being completely one with it. And so you learn by comparison to let go of what's valueless, which is anything in form, and embrace what is truly valuable, which is what is formless, pure formless awareness, or perfect love within you. And the gods he's talking about are just your beliefs, which we valued as true. We gave them truth, and we gave them power, and we gave them meaning. And he's saying all of that is false. It's a misidentification of your mind with a false belief system that is enslaving. Okay. Any other thoughts on number 4?
No, that's clear. Thank you.
5, John.
Well, repeat the name of God and call upon yourself, whose name is his. When I claim perfect love's identity, I call upon my true self, whose identity is perfect love's. Repeat his name and all the tiny nameless things on earth slip into right perspective. When I claim its identity, all the tiny meaningless things on earth slip into right perspective for me. Those who call upon the name of God cannot mistake the nameless for the name, nor sin for grace, nor bodies for the Holy Son of God. I call upon the identity of perfect love. I cannot mistake the meaninglessness for its identity, nor sin for grace, or bodies for the innocent extension of perfect love. And should you join a brother as you sit with him in silence and repeat God's name along with him within your quiet mind, you have established there an altar which reaches to God himself and to his Son. And should I join a companion as we sit in silence and claim perfect love's identity together, within our quiet minds, we establish a foundation that reaches to pure formless awareness of perfect love itself and to its extension.
Okay, thoughts on that? What's he saying there in summary?
Well, it's saying very much that when we go to the Word of God, we realign ourselves, and when we do so with our companion, we create we recreate a space of love.
Well, so we find it in and through our companions, which is one of the major themes of the course. You find God in your companion. That state of awareness can be accessed through a holy relationship, which is actually the theme of the text tonight. It's called salvation and the holy relationship. So there's that theme coming through again very strongly. Yeah. Okay, so number 6. Let's read it. Not much to translate, just the first sentence, and then we can go into alternative after that. Elaine?
Yeah. Practice but this today. Repeats God's name slowly again and still again. I practice only this today, claiming perfect love's identity slowly again and still again by saying, I am perfect love.
Yeah, I claims fixing. Again, I am perfect love. So it doesn't actually tell you what the practice is. Just repeat God's name. But it doesn't tell you what that name is, does it? Repeat God's name slowly again and still again. Okay, so what is God's name? God? Are you supposed to say God over and over again? It's not clear, is it?
No.
So I just put this in and went, I am perfect love, as an affirmation of the truth. Or you could just say, I am, if you I am that I am. That would also be accurate. Remember, the words are just pointers to the reality they describe. So I am perfect love is repeating God's name. That's really the highest prayer, claiming that awareness as your own. I am that I am. I am that presence, as was revealed to Moses. You are that. Or when you claim that and you accept it, then this is the prayer, the highest form of prayer to God. And the prayer that merges your mind, your awareness with its awareness, which is the whole point of everything, that you become one awareness. And so the true prayer claims that oneness, is that oneness. Not saying, please give me that oneness. It's accepting that oneness as it, done, accomplished now. Okay, I want to carry on.
I hear nothing else. All my thoughts become anchored on this. I use no other word except at the beginning when I say today's idea only once, and then perfect love's identity becomes only my only thought, my only word, the only thing that occupies my mind, the only wish I have, the only sound with any meaning, and the only identity of everything that I desire to perceive and everything I call my own.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
Just practice until it becomes your identity. Perfect love being your identity, and yeah, your everything. Yeah.
I am perfect love, the I am statement. And that was, remember in the course, that was our essence statement. I am love.
Yeah.
That's claiming the name of God. So that's actually what it means. When you say I am that presence, and I call it love, I am perfect love, I am loving awareness, you're on phrase, then you're repeating the name of God and claiming it as your own identity. It's a very powerful affirmation of truth, which is why it's powerful. It has a transformational effect on someone's mind. You do it frequently. When Marisa Pierre consulted to her clients, who were all usually horribly addicted to egoic pursuits, she would just give them one affirmation, and that was I am enough. So all you do is you say that morning, evening, in between, I am enough, I am enough, which is really the same. I am, it's an I am statement. And I am enough means I am love. So perhaps love was a bit, the word love would have been too much of a stretch for them. So hence enough, but it's the same thing, because love is enough. Love is infinite and eternal, and love is enough for us. So if I am enough, then I must be love. It's the implication. And it worked. Our clients would, very simple, just an affirmation, starting to change their core belief about themselves. Worked amazingly well. Okay, so happy to move to number 7. John, if you can read that one kindly for us.
Thus do we give an invitation which can never be refused. In this way I give an invitation which can never be refused. And God will come and answer it himself. And pure forms of awareness of perfect love will come and answer my call itself. Think not he hears the little prayers of those who call on him with names of idols cherished by the world. I do not think it hears the little prayers of those who call on it with false beliefs cherished by the world. They cannot reach him thus. They cannot reach it in this way. He cannot hear requests that he be not himself, or that his son receive another name than his. They cannot reach it in this way. It cannot hear requests that it be not itself, or that its extension receive another identity than his.
So I think I'm going to change this to I. Cherished by the world, so they cannot reach in this way. I cannot hear requests that I be not myself.
Yeah.
all that my source's extension, receive another identity than its. Yeah, so what's he saying here?
So he's saying here that if I make this pure request, it will be recognized and heard and responded to. And those who make requests upon the world, the illusion, will never cherish what they receive.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and source cannot hear anything any request that isn't pure, that isn't of him or of my true identity.
Mm. Again, he's just saying it's not possible to be other than your source. And if you believe it is, then you're not talking to your source. You're in a delusion. In nowhere land, really. Never land. That's what we live in. A thought that's not really possible. And we live in this impossible thought, an impossible dream, and we try and make that impossible thought and dream work. And God, knows nothing of this madness. It's not because it's got nothing to do with God. Okay. Elaine, if you can read number 8.
In the alternative,
No, there's a bit of translation, so just read it in both.
repeat God's name and you acknowledge him as sole creator of reality. When I repeat perfect love's identity, I acknowledge it as the sole source of reality. And you acknowledge also that his son is part of him, creating his name. I also acknowledge that its extension is part of it, extending its identity as well. Sit silently.
That's what he means by creating in his name. It's extending this true identity into the world through our thoughts, words, and actions.
Yeah. Sit silently and let his name become the all-encompassing idea that holds your mind completely. I sit silently, letting its identity become the all-encompassing idea that holds my mind completely. Let all thoughts be still except this one. That's the same. And to all other thoughts respond with this and see God's name replace the 1,000 little names you gave your thoughts, not really realizing that there is one name for all there is and all that there will be. And to all other thoughts, I respond with this, perceiving perfect love's identity, replace the 1,000 little beliefs I give my thoughts, not realizing that there is one identity for all there is and all that ever will be.
Okay, let's see what's he saying here.
just to repeat my identity of perfect love and to acknowledge this is the sole source of my reality. And seeing perfect love's identity, replacing the thousands of little beliefs that we give the thoughts when we don't realize there's only one identity. And that's perfect love.
Mm.
So, yeah.
1,000 little beliefs I gave my thoughts. 1,000 little beliefs, little names. 1,000 little names you gave your thoughts. I think the AI did that. I said 1,000 little names I gave my thoughts. Realizing, so we have all these, fragmented names for our thoughts, but actually there's just one identity, one awareness that is beyond name. Pure formless awareness has no name, just is. So the name of God is just to claim that identity as you are. And you might use a word like I am perfect love, but it's entering into that awareness. That's what he's talking about. To repeat the name of God means to enter into that awareness over and over again and experience it as yours. This is your own awareness. So God is no longer an external to you, not some external idea or concept. It's your own innermost experience. And many theologians and religious leaders and so on will say this is blasphemy. It's interesting. So that's blasphemous. You can't know God directly. You can't be God. That's blasphemous. But actually, that's their mistake. It's just theological dogma that prevents them from, accepting the truth that we are one with this presence. And so, yes, we absolutely must experience it as our own awareness in order to know it. How else can you know it but through your own experience? Again, that's the difference between a mystic and a theologian, philosopher. Mystic experiences it directly, and the theologian talks about it and has conceptual ideas about it, but doesn't experience the truth directly. Okay.
Yeah.
Happy with number 8. So number 9, John. Good. That's going to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So you should read an alternative.
Today I can achieve a state in which I experience the gift of grace. I can escape all bondage of the world and give the world the same release I found. I can remember what the world forgot and offer it my own remembering. Today I can accept the part I play in its awakening and my own as well. I can accomplish both perfectly.
Yeah. You're saying there.
So it's saying here that today I can reunite with Source and free myself and the world as I perceive it by remembering what I did at one time know, but have forgotten. And thereby also play my part in the reawakening of the world and myself.
Remembering. So it's the remembering of the sonship. We come from our fragmented states back into one, and we remember. We become one again, members of this one awareness, one reality. hence remember. Yeah, I go back. I become a member again. Of this reality this home that I once left. So the Holy Spirit is the remembrance that takes us back into that divine state of pure formless awareness, perfect love. And as we remember that state, we get glimpses of it in this world. That's our true identity revealing itself. And this is the name of God that we then experiencing, claiming. Okay. So number 10, Elaine, if you can read that. Original and alternative, please.
Turn to the name of God to your release, and it is given you. I turn to the identity of perfect love for my release, and it is given to me. No prayer, but this is necessary, for it holds them all within it. No prayer, but this is necessary. Oh, it's the same. Words are insignificant, and all requests unneeded when God's Son calls on his Father's name. Words are insignificant, and all requests unneeded when perfect love's extension calls onto its source's identity. His Father's thoughts become his own. Its source's thoughts become mine. He makes his claim to all his Father gave, is giving still, and will forever give. It calls on extension to let all things it thought it made by meaningless now, and in their place, the wholly aware identity of perfect love becomes its judgment of their worthiness.
Worthlessness.
Oh, worthlessness. Same. Is it? No, apart from the God. He calls on him to let all things he thought he made be nameless now, and in their place the holy name of God becomes his judgment of their worthlessness.
And then the alternative, it calls on its extension.
It calls on its extension to let all things it thought it made by meaningless now.
Be meaningless.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to shut the door. I've got noisy football coming through. 2 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just noisy. That's better. Right. It calls on its extension to let all things it thought it made be meaningless now, and in their place the wholly aware identity of perfect love becomes its judgment of their worthlessness.
Okay, so what's he saying?
Well, we turn to the identity of the perfect love for our release, and it will be given to us. And no prayers are necessary because it's there. Words are insignificant. They're just signposts, aren't they?
I think I'm gonna make this it's a bit more personalized, I think. So the source's thoughts become mine. Talking about the extensions. It makes it so my claim to all my source gave is giving still and forever give. All right, so my thoughts. calls on me to let all things I thought I made be meaningless in their place. Where identity of perfect love becomes my judgment of their worthlessness. So just read that in the alternative from the top. Just make sure we got all that correct.
I turn to the identity of perfect love for my release, and it is given to me. No prayer, but this is necessary, for it holds them all within it. Words are insignificant, and all requests unneeded when perfect love's extension calls on the source's identity. Its source's thoughts become mine. I make my claim to all my source gave, is giving still and will forever give. My source calls on me to let all things I thought I made be meaningless now, and in their place, the wholly aware identity of perfect love becomes my judgment of their worthlessness.
Okay. Yeah, what's he saying there?
Well, again, if it's our identity of perfect love is our release. Words are insignificant, and requests are unneeded for perfect love's extension. Calls on its source for identity. Yes.
So when we call on the name of God, which is our true identity, everything else just becomes meaningless and worthless because it's put in proper perspective. Because that experience, you see why experience is so important. Because if you experience it, that's just awesome. It's incredible and amazing. And you know, what else could I want? Nothing in this world compares. This is why experience is so important, because otherwise, if it's just an idea, it's a name in your mind, an intellectual concept, rather than an experience, how can that help you to let go of all the things of the world? It can't. It's not big enough. It's just a name. It's just a concept held in your mind, rather than this awesome experience. So to say the name of God is to experience this deeper awareness of God as yourself, the I am presence as you. And you might say that in words, but it's really the experience that we're going for. Okay, this is the last paragraph, the lesson. So John, if you can read that kindly.
Yeah, all little things are silent. Little sounds are soundless now. The little things of earth have disappeared. The universe consists of nothing but the Son of God who calls upon his Father. The universe consists of nothing but the extension of perfect love, which calls upon its source. And his Father's voice gives answer in his Father's holy name. And its source's voice gives answer in its source's innocent identity. In this eternal still relationship, in which communication far transcends all words, and yet exceeds in depth and height whatever words could possibly convey, is peace eternal. In this eternal still relationship in which communication far transcends all words, and yet exceeds in depth and height whatever words could possibly convey, is eternal peace. In our Father's name, we would experience this peace today. I will experience this peace today in my source's identity. And in his name it shall be given us. And in its identity it is given me.
Okay.
So it's
Nice
pointing
paragraph
out,
to end.
yes, it is, and it's pointing out that as we go back to source, as we unite in source, all disturbances and littlenesses of the illusion fade away, disappear.
And as he's saying, it's this far transcends all words. Sees in depth and height, whatever words could possibly convey is eternal peace. And so he's pointing us to the experience of knowing God experientially. That's what knowledge is, to know it experientially as opposed to theoretically or intellectually. And I know God in my own experience. And so that's where he's pointing us, and he's training us to start experiencing this as we progress with these lessons. So more and more these lessons point us to the experience rather than just intellectual ideas and concepts, to an actual experience of this deep peace and the grace that is always there for us, if we so choose. Okay, it's a nice lesson. Hopefully the interpretation, the translation gave you a bit of an alternative perspective on what God's name means. So it's a little summary. We'll summarize it nicely. So, Elaine, if you can read the first two paragraphs of that.
Perfect love's identity is wholly aware, but no more so than mine. To call on its identity is to call on my own. My source gives me my identity, uniting me with my companions. It reminds me of who I am, even though I am not. I may not remember. Perfect love's identity, when I recognize it, invites true thoughts and feelings that assure me of my safety and help me experience pure formless awareness of perfect love. When I claim this identity, I play my part in releasing the world from illusions, and I experience grace, healing, true perception, hearing, happiness, and love. Healing, I should say. Healing, true perception.
Yeah, maybe that should be healing.
Healing.
Oh, we've got healing twice.
Yeah.
Think it out.
So healing, true perception, happiness, and love. I experience how easily I forget beliefs that once had value, but now become meaningless.
Yeah, so what's he saying here?
Well, our source is our identity. And once we realize that, then the other is meaningless. What we used to value is meaningless now, because the experience from pure formless awareness is, joy, happiness, love, and that's it. There's no, can't beat that.
Yeah, and do you see why it's so important to experience? Because if you just have an intellectual idea of God, that's not going to dislodge all of your illusions.
No.
So it can't. How can it? It's like, well, even if you very devout religious fundamentalists, and there are many, it can't possibly undo all of those fixed illusions and the conditioning of the ego mind and cultural conditioning, religious conditioning, and so on. It's only the direct experience of this, oh my God, that was just mind-blowing, awesome, experience that makes you realize that everything by comparison is meaningless. But that can only happen through that experience, a mystic experience or a peak experience, as Maslow called it. Which is why the mystics get it, and pretty much everyone else doesn't, because they haven't actually had the experience. Okay, so John, next couple want to claim perfect love's identity.
When I claim perfect love's identity, I call upon my true self, putting everything into perspective. Should I join a companion in this understanding, we establish a foundation that reaches to pure formless awareness itself. By repeating the words, I am perfect love, become focused on this identity alone, allowing it to occupy my mind.
And what's he saying there?
Is saying that as we re-establish connection with source, especially if we do it with a companion, we experience pure formless awareness itself and reunite with source.
Okay, yeah.
In this way, I offer an invitation that pure formless awareness of perfect love will answer. This call does not heed false beliefs or requests contrary to its nature. By repeating perfect love's identity, I acknowledge it as the sole reality, letting it fill my mind and replace all my little beliefs. So as we do this process, we let go of all, we let
You just broke up there, John. Say the last sentence again.
Oh yeah. So as we reconnect with source, we understand our own identity and connection with reality.
And it takes over, it fills our mind completely. And you fill my mind and replace all my little beliefs. Fill my awareness. So it becomes, all the only thing we know. That experience just replaces the ego's idea and identity completely, ultimately, which is why the ego is so resistant, because it knows this is the beginning of the end for it, fighting for its life. Okay, Elaine, if you can read the next couple to close it out. Oh, actually, there's still a key message. So you read those and then John can read the key message.
Yeah. Today I can experience grace, escape worldly bondage, and remember what the world had forgotten. I accept my part in awakening and know that both my awakening and the world's can be accomplished perfectly, turning to perfect love for release. I find that words are insignificant, and the innocent identity of perfect love replaces my identification with worthlessness. All small things become silent, and the universe now consists only of love's extension in the eternal relationship. I can at last experience the permanent peace that my source gives me.
Very, very nice. Just a feeling of being able to rest in that. Recognize and claim. John, you want to read the key message? So that's the summary of the summary in one short paragraph.
Yeah. I recognize and claim perfect love's identity as my own, uniting with it and my companions. Accepting this understanding, I let go of illusions and meaningless beliefs, embracing grace, healing, and pure formless awareness of perfect love. Through focusing solely on my identity as love and this eternal relationship with my source, I experience peace consistently.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's an affirmation that as we consciously connect with our inner self, we let go of illusions and merge into a sense of oneness, which will join with us, or which we enter.
Yeah, and I'll experience peace consistently if I do this. It's really the outcome of it. So it's a very, very simple idea. It's just misstated in many ways and many different passages in this lesson to bring us into this state of unity with our source, which is the name of God, our own true identity, and that will bring us peace. We'll experience consistent peace. Peace consistently or consistent peace? Doesn't matter. What do you think is better?
Consistent peace, I think.
Okay, so that's the lesson. So shall we crack on and do the text? There's 4 paragraphs, and then we'll do a little med at the end, if you like.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I
Yeah.
had a couple of questions as well, Jono. If that's
No,
we've got a time to have a look at those.
probably not today. Can we do it tomorrow?
Yeah.
In the week? Join tomorrow. I was going to do an afternoon session tomorrow.
Okay.
Does that work? Or
yeah, that should work. Yeah.
12:30.
Yeah, I'll come on a bit later probably, but yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so we'll do it then. Just a bit push for time today.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So let's go into lesson then. Let's just stop this. I'll look at so let's have a look at today's. Where are we? Let's find the correct one. Yeah, there we go. So this is new chapter 22 called Salvation and the Holy Relationship. This is the introduction, which is 4 paragraphs. So let's go straight into it. So I think it's Elaine's turn. Elaine, if you want to read it in the alternative, it's just God will be pure formless awareness of perfect love, and then brothers and so on become companions. It's a few translations you're familiar with by now.
Right. I should take pity on myself, so long enslaved. I rejoice that whom pure formless awareness of perfect love has joined and have come together and need no longer perceive sin apart. No two can perceive sin together, for they could never see it in the same place and time. Sin in a strictly individual perception seen in the other, yet believed by believed by each to be within themselves. Each one seems to make a different error, and one the other cannot understand. It is the same mistake made by the same and let go by its maker in the same way. The innocence of my relationship releases me and my companion, undoing the effects of what we both believe and saw. And with their going is the need for sin gone with them.
Let's see what's he saying here.
About sin. It's all about sin. But well, once we reach the choice of pure formless awareness to perfect love, we no longer perceive sin apart, and no two can sin together. What two separate people? Two separate. Because
I think what he's saying, shall I help you?
Yeah.
What he's saying is sin is strictly individual perception. Remember, sin underpins the idea of individuality. We look at our diagram. Put it up for you. Where are we? There we go. So we've got individuality. There we go. Okay. So you can see that underlying the individuality is the guilt and the sin that are individuality's consequence. Because I think in order to be an individual self, I think I've had to destroy God or love. And so now I think I'm guilty of this terrible crime. And so sin underpins individual identity, and the two go hand in hand. So he's saying here that sin is a strictly individual perception because it comes from an individual, a split in the mind. Sin cannot be perceived if you're identifying with your source as pure formless awareness of perfect love. It's not possible. So sin is a perception held by individuals in the mistaken belief that they are individuals. And then we see it as something other than us. Okay, well, that person's sin is not my sin. It's their sin, they're guilty, and we project our guilt onto them in that way. Which is what the ego must do, because it doesn't want to feel guilty. So it has to then project it out and say, well, you're the guilty one. And that, of course, separates you from the other person, because now you are judging them as separate from you in that projection. Okay, so this is why I'm saying sin is strictly an individual perception. You see that?
Yeah.
And each one seems to make a different error. So the other person, you might go, well, that person, their sin is not my sin. They're doing something else. But actually, it's the same error. It's the same mistake made by the same mind and let go by its maker in the same way, right? Because we're just one mind making the same mistake. So whether it's their apparent sin or my apparent sin, doesn't really matter. What I need to do is let go of the idea of sin entirely, which means that I don't judge them. You see how judgment and sin are related. If I judge, then I'm projecting the guilt onto someone else, and I'm condemning them, and I'm making myself separate from them. But if I let that go and realize that actually their true state is innocence, no matter what they seem to have done, no matter what sins they seem to have committed, then the innocence of my relationship releases me and my companion, because I restore my mind through that correction back to source, back to pure form, the words of perfect love. By reinterpreting the guilt and sin that seemed to be in my experience of the relationship. But the reinterpretation restores my mind to back to its source. And the need for sin is gone with them. And so if we can do this, we don't need sin anymore, because we don't need to be an individual self anymore. We're not trying to be right and maintain our individuality. What we're trying to do is merge with the other person and become one with them. In which case, sin has no justification at all. If I'm really one with you, then there's no individual self. There's been no separation. Then how can I be guilty for a crime I didn't commit? And so the idea of sin and guilt deconstructs with the innocence. So it undoes the effects of what we both believed and perceived. Which is why the holy relationship is the most powerful transformational tool he's giving us. Well, there's forgiveness. Obviously, we must forgive or let go. He's saying in the context of the holy relationship, by letting go of your projections of guilt and sin onto that other person, you heal your own mind, you restore your mind to the innocence that is its true nature, and you help the other person to do the same. And he says that's the fast track. Heal your special relationship and make it into a holy one. Then you have to heal your mind in that process and return your mind back to pure formless awareness of perfect love. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I've got put down.
Elaine, you happy with that?
Oh, yes, yeah.
All right, so number 2 then. John, if you can read that in the alternative. So much to translate there.
Okay. Who has need for sin? Only the lonely and alone, who see their companions different from themselves. It is this difference, seen but not real, that makes the need for sin, not real but seen, seem justified. And all this would be real if sin was so. For an unholy relationship is based on differences, where each one thinks the other has what he has not. They come together each to complete himself and rob the other. They stay until they think that there is nothing left to steal and then move on. And so I wander through a world of strangers, unlike myself, living with my body perhaps under a common roof that shelters neither, in the same room and yet a world apart.
Yeah, make that we. So we wander through a world of strangers, unlike. Seem to wander through a world of strangers, unlike ourselves, living with their bodies. Common roof that shelters neither. In the same room and yet a world apart. Isn't that quite poignant? Like how many people's relationships does that describe?
Could it be our bodies rather than their bodies, John? Living with our bodies, perhaps under a common roof?
So we seem, to the world of strangers unlike ourselves, living with our bodies, perhaps under a common roof that shelters. In the same room and yet a world apart. And so we just feel that disconnection. If you're in the unholy relationship, the separate self, feel a world apart even though you're in the same house or the same room. And that's how separation goes. But he's saying it need not be that way. If we're just willing to drop the belief in sin, realize that it's an illusion of the ego, it's not true. Okay, so any other thoughts on that paragraph? John? Okay, I'm not sure what's happened to John. Okay, let's move on then to number 3.
And this,
Yeah,
other-
you're saying here that
Okay, yeah. Did you want to make a comment, or maybe it's your connection?
yeah, and my connection just left for a bit.
Hmm.
So what he's saying here is that those who are, well, he's asking us who needs sin, really, who would want separation,
Hmm.
and it's only those who are feeling different from others that want to justify their differences and invent this story of sin.
Hmm.
Which just reinforces separation.
Yeah. It enforces the individual identity. The sin underpins the individuality. So this is the conundrum of a relationship. Apparently you want love, but actually what you want is to confirm your individual identity. And so you have to then believe in sin and guilt and fear and attack, and all of that goes with the individual identity. And so it's why the special relationship can never work, because it's two individuals trying to love each other while remaining separate. But love is one. Love by definition is perfect oneness. So how can you love each other if you remain separate from each other? You can't. So what you're really doing is nothing. It's just another illusion. Really just perpetuating the illusion of an individual self, the idea of separation, the sin, guilt, fear, and attack that go along with that thought system. Which is why the unholy relationship is something that he focuses on so much and says, well, this has to be undone. Okay, so it's given us the unholy relationship, the sinful relationship is translated. Let's what the holy relationship looks like in the contrast. So just read it in. It's just going to be heaven. Heaven is pure formless awareness. Otherwise, it will be pretty much the same. So I'm just going to read that. Okay, Elaine, can you read number 3? Okay, and there's not reading number 3. John, can you read number 3 then?
Yeah. An innocent relationship starts from a different premise. I have looked within and seen no lack. Accepting my completion, I would extend it by joining with another, whole as myself. I see no difference between these selves. The differences are only of the body. Therefore, I look on nothing I would take. I deny not my own reality because it is the truth. Just under the state of pure formless awareness do I stand, but close enough not to return to earth. For this relationship has the state of pure formless awareness as innocence. How far from home can a relationship so like to the state of pure formless awareness be?
Yeah, so what's he saying here?
So it's saying that the holy relationship starts from the firm belief that we are whole and complete within ourselves, and we realize that within ourselves and within our partner. We see no differences. We are not seeking anything in our partner. And this relationship helps us understand the state of being connected to our source.
Yeah, well said. I think we can experience it directly. We can start experiencing this state of pure formless awareness through the relationship, through the feeling of merging with that person. As the innocence of pure formless awareness. How far from home can a relationship so like the state of pure formless awareness be? And make home capital way. So this becomes a major learning device for the Holy Spirit to teach us this experientially, this truth, and a major opportunity to undo the blocks of sin, because we've got to go from where we are in the sinful relationship, seemingly as individuals, trying to perpetuate our individuality through the relationship. We've got to move it into this relationship that's just below heaven. It's so close to heaven that God's ready to take the final step.
Is that last sentence correct, John? How far from home can a relationship so like the state of pure formless awareness be?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it? Right, okay.
Saying how far from home being heaven can a relationship that's so like to the state of pure formless awareness really be? It can't be very far. That's what he's saying.
No.
There's a question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a question, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then just last paragraph, number 4. Elaine, are you back?
Yeah.
You can read. If you can read that, and the alternative is just going to be the Son of God, become the extension of perfect love.
Just a second, I'm just going to, he's got the football on loud again and I can't hear. Just shut the door there. Just be a second. Right. Let me think what an innocent relationship can teach. Here is belief in differences undone. Here is the faith in... Oh, sorry, it's okay. Yeah. Here is the faith in differences shifted to sameness. And here is the sight of differences transformed to vision. Reason now can lead me and my companion to the logic conclusion of our union. It must extend as I extended when and he joined. It must reach out beyond itself as I reached out beyond the body to let me and my companion be joined. And now the sameness that I saw extends and finally removes all senses of differences, so that the sameness that lies beneath them all becomes apparent. Here is the golden circle when I recognize the extension of perfect love, for what is born into innocent relationship can never end.
Thoughts on that?
Well, just talking about what the innocent relationship can teach. And here is the belief in differences undone. And the shift is to sameness, because underneath we're born innocent, and that can never end. We're just, yeah.
Yeah, lovely, lovely end. So we are one, we are the same. We're not individual, we're not separate, we're not different. Sin has no justification. And in this awareness, we are ready for heaven. We're that close to the state of pure formless awareness that God can take the final step and lift us up into that state. So the holy relationship becomes a major learning device for the Holy Spirit to teach us this sameness, this oneness. And this awareness, born into an innocent relationship, can never end. It's eternal. So the relationship becomes dedicated to God, to awakening, and transcends all those illusions of sin and guilt and fear and attack that characterize the unholy relationship. Okay, and it's just a quick executive summary. So, John, if you can read the first paragraph.
In my understanding, enslaved by beliefs, I rejoice that pure formless awareness of perfect love has joined us, freeing us from sin. I recognize that sin is a personal perception, and in my relationships, innocence undoes the effects of what we believed. In contrast, loneliness and separation lead to a feeling of justification for sin. Unholy relationships focus on differences, stealing from each other, and wandering in a world apart.
Yeah, thoughts on that?
Well, they're saying that as we free ourselves of our past beliefs and move towards pure formless awareness, we recognize that belief in separation is something we invented, and that innocence undoes our misperception.
Mhm. Fixing this. It's hard to steal what they think they want from each other and wander in a world apart. So just read that last sentence again, if you don't mind.
Then relationships focus on differences in which the partner's stealing what they think they want from each other. Sinful relationships focus on differences in which the partners steal what they think they want from each other and wander in a world apart.
Yeah. Okay. Elaine, can you read the next one?
Sorry, I need to contact the lady who's going into the Tenerife places. I think she's in Tenerife Airport now and she doesn't know whether she's going to get a key or not. So can I finish off the chat with her because it's quite urgent?
Yeah, okay. Just listen in. John, if you can do that.
Yeah. In an innocent relationship, I see no lack or difference, accepting my completion and extending it to another. I stand close to the state of pure formless awareness, embracing its innocence. An innocent relationship teaches the undoing of differences and transformation into vision. It leads me and my companion to union, extending beyond this body, removing all sense of differences and recognizing the extension of pure formless awareness of perfect love. What is born into such an innocent relationship never ends.
Yeah.
Which is very beautiful.
Yeah. And that's the true purpose of the relationship is to unite us with God, our source, and each other as one with that source. That's all it's really for. It's not about two individuals trying to make each other happy, which is impossible. It's never going to work. If you define yourself as individual, then there's no love. There's no genuine love there. It's always a special love. What can you do for me? What can I get from you? And what can the other person get from me? That's why it talks about stealing. Steal what we think we want. So it becomes, well, who gets more? Who can take more from the other? And the holy relationship is completely opposite to that. Okay, and then just a key message, which is summarizing in one paragraph.
I recognize that sin is an individual perception, and in relationships, innocence undoes its effects. In contrast, sinful relationships focus on differences and stealing power from each other. An innocent relationship teaches me to correct my perception so it extends beyond the body, removing differences and helping me recognize the eternal extension of perfect love in my companion.
Yeah. So a very simple idea, a very simple message communicated quite clearly, I think, in this section.
Yeah. Can we just go to the last sentence, the key message again, Johnny? Yeah. I just want to reread innocent. Yeah, it's very good, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think so. I think the summaries are, well, some of the key messages. It's
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
A very, I mean, this is not rocket science, is it? It's a simple message they're giving us over and over and over again. So to actually do it is the challenge, because it's not easy overcoming the misperceptions of sin and guilt and
Yeah. Yeah.
fear and attack. To actually bring it into your relationship, start doing it, and really perceiving the person in this way is the challenge. And that's where you undo your own ego, because you have to let go of your own false beliefs, which lead to the misperceptions of the other person. So they're just your mirror. They mirror the ego to you, and then you judge the mirror. You say, well, the problem's in the mirror. It just doesn't seem that way. The mirror, seems to have its own individual will, doesn't it? That's the illusion. It's a very clever. The ego is cunning and ingenious. It's a very clever system to convince us that we are separate, and the special relationship is integral to that system. So here he's focusing on that, key part of the ego's defense system, saying, well, let's look at it again with the Holy Spirit and turn it around and undo it, and use it for your awakening instead.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so yeah, any other thoughts, comments, or questions on this one?
No, it's 9:30. You needed to get away at 9:30, so.
Okay, happy to end it there. We'll just skip the med today.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, join. I've got the whole afternoon tomorrow, so
Okay, good.
Look at the text at leisure and do a med and everything. I think Elaine is caught up. She's not going to be able to meditate. She's talked about her new house sitter. So thanks, Elaine. Thanks for joining, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
12:30.
No, I'll not be able to make the 12:30, but if I can catch later on, then I'll do that.
Yeah, all right. Well, join when you can. John's joining later, so if the session happens later, then so be it. But I'll advertise it for 12:30.
Yeah. Okay then.
All right. Hope you sort your
Yes, I know.
And stay in flow.
Yeah, stay in flow, definitely. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for
Thanks,
joining.
John. Cheers, John. Cheers, Elaine.
Bye, John.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks to John and Elaine for joining. Good session. Key message is let go of sin and guilt and enter into holy relationship by claiming the name of God as your own, which is your own true identity, and see that self, the Christ, or your true self in the other person. That's unconditional love. Let's go of all sin and guilt. So powerful message. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to join us in sessions, I invite you to join our next masterclass. You can find more details about that in the text box below and a link. You can go register. So book for the next one. It's coming Sunday. And forward to seeing you then. Hope to catch you on the inside. Namaste. Which means the loving awareness in me acknowledges and honors that same loving awareness and the true self in you.